Alright, I just mentioned this issue that on the home page, it would be really nice to display a proto feed, just a first cut of this micropost feed that we'll develop in the next lesson, so that when you post a new micropost, it appears on this page right away. Let's look at a mock-up of where we're going with that. So this is the idea, that we have the same things we had on the previous mock-up, just this user information area and the micropost text area. And then here we've got a micropost feed with paginated feed items. Since it's users that have feeds, that suggests creating a feed method on the user model. Just going to put that down here. We'll just call it feed. And then for now, we'll just return all of the microposts for the current user. So that's micropost.where user ID equals the ID of the current user. This is the first time we've seen the where function. This is a really useful function for issuing SQL queries. And this question mark here escapes out anything that gets inserted. Making sure to always use this question mark when you want to insert information into this query automatically avoids a critical vulnerability called SQL injection, sometimes called SQL injection. In this case, the ID is just an integer, so it doesn't really matter. But it's a good idea to be completely consistent because then you'll never be vulnerable. By the way, you might notice that this is essentially equivalent to saying this. Remember, we have user.micropost, so this is really self.micropost. But inside this user model, we can omit self. The reason I wrote micropost.where is because this formulation here generalizes more nicely to the full feed in the next lesson. So let's do this here, save it. Then on the home page, we need to have a list of these feeds. We should paginate them too, so let's go to the home template here. Actually, no, we want the user's controller, don't we? There are too many tabs here. This is a sign that there are too many tabs. Here we are. Oh, and in fact, I was still wrong. We want the static pages controller. That's where the home page is, right? The home action. Okay, so now we want to define an instance variable that has the items in the feed so that we can then put them on the home page as mocked up here. So let's call that @feedItems. Should only happen if users logged in, so let's do this. We just defined feed, so current user.feed should work, and we want to paginate them. Oops. And let's make a feed partial on the home page. We can do that here. Save that and go here. And after the micropost form, it's actually outside of the aside, right? This stuff here is in the aside, so we want a div. And then let's make it an H3. Doesn't matter too much. Let's render the feed. Of course, we need to make a partial for feed now. Yeah, so an error there because the feed partial isn't defined. So let's go here. And the feed should render if there are any feed items. It's going to be an ordered list. Let's give it class microposts. Let's render the feed items. And let's paginate them too. Save that and see how we're doing. We're pretty red there. Let's see what happened. Something is definitely very wrong. Up to syntax error though, that should be easy to fix. Right, I just didn't close this off. There we go. This feed is now working. There's something a little mysterious though. Let's take a look at this partial. So here we got render at feed items. How does Rails know how to render that thing? We've talked about this before, but this is a really good application of it. So what is the class of each of these feed items? Well, each feed item is a member of this collection here. Static pages controller. So what Rails is doing here is it's seeing that this is a collection of feed items. It's saying, well, I should call a partial on each of these items. And it knows because the class of each item is a micropost to look for a template called underscore micropost in the micropost views folder. So that's why this is just working. It's because we defined this micropost view, or this micropost partial. So before we had an instance variable called @micropost when we were rendering these things on the show page, like here, right here. But this variable name is irrelevant. What matters is the class of each object in this collection. Let's run our test suite to make sure we're green. That's great. There's actually one subtlety left. If we go here to the home page and submit an invalid micropost, say one that's blank, we get this error. Let's see where this is coming from. This is in the static pages controller. No, it's actually in the micropost controller. You can see here the URL is /micropost. So this is the create action in the micropost controller. Right, so what's happening here is that this micropost is not valid. So @micropost.save is false. So it's falling through to this right here. And this branch of the create action does not define an @feedItems variable. So it's nil, and that's why we're getting this. We're getting nil.any question mark, but there is no such method on nil. So that means we need to do something like this. Now I'm just going to do an empty array here. You can save this and see the results. Let's go back. That's weird. Did I not save that? Huh. Oh, it should go before the render. Here. Right. So what happens here is that the feed just disappears temporarily. Now that's not the best behavior. The problem is that if you were to do something obvious like this, say, oh, well, let's just paginate it. Why not just do that? That seemed to work. And the problem is that if you go down to the pagination links, they're on the microposts. You can see right down here at the bottom. They're on the microposts URL, so /micropost. If you click on this, it'll complain. So it's possible to hack around this, but at the level of this tutorial, it's just not worth the trouble. So what we're going to do is do the next best thing and just make this empty.